They say you don't notice the moment your life changes. That it hits you in hindsight when the dust has settled and you're standing in the wreckage, wondering how you got there. But I remember the exact moment everything cracked. It was a Thursday evening in Chicago. Cold, loud, and full of glittering lies. The kind of night you'd forget, if not for how sharply it branded itself onto your memory. My wife, Jessica, and I were attending a corporate appreciation dinner at a downtown hotel. She was a rising star at her firm, regional director of sales, 5 states under her belt, always flying somewhere or closing something. I traveled less in my job, worked more from home, which meant our schedules were already like parallel lines, close but never really meeting. But that night we were in the same place. Same city, same building, same room. Supposedly, the event itself was nothing special. Catering that tried too hard, background jazz, wine that made your lips dry. I watched her work the room like she owned it. She was magnetic, laughing at the right jokes, touching arms as she passed, calling people by name. I didn't mind it. Honestly, I used to admire it. Jessica was always the one people gravitated toward. I was proud of that once. We sat at a table near the back, next to a couple from Seattle and some stiff finance guy from Boston. Jessica barely touched her food. She kept checking her phone, her thumb twitching against the screen. A half-smile playing on her lips like someone texting a crush they hadn't quite secured yet. At one point, I leaned in. "Everything okay?" She blinked, startled like she forgot I was there. "Yeah, just New Orleans stuff. Inventory issue. I'll probably need to call them in a bit." She sipped her wine, eyes darting back to her phone. "Don't wait up if I have to duck out." She always said it like that, soft enough to make it sound casual, dismissive enough to end the conversation. I nodded. What else could I do? An hour later, she excused herself. I watched her disappear into the crowd with her phone pressed to her ear, the slit in her dress flashing just enough leg to make heads turn. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. I texted her once. "Everything okay?" No response. When she returned nearly an hour later, she had a fresh gloss on her lips and a smell I didn't recognize. Not her usual vanilla and rose perfume, something muskier, masculine almost. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was tired, that I was being insecure. We went back to our room around midnight. She was quiet, changed quickly, and climbed into bed with her back to me. Her phone was plugged in, face down on the far nightstand. The next morning, while she was in the shower, her work phone buzzed, 3 times in quick succession. Normally, I wouldn't look, but something in my gut told me to pick it up. It wasn't the messages that got me. It was the email notification. Hotel receipt, corporate account submission confirmation. The total, $489.67. Same date, same hotel. First, I thought it was just our room, but that charge didn't match our reservation. Ours was prepaid through her corporate card. This one was itemized, filed manually, and listed under a completely different room number. The receipt showed a deluxe king suite, separate from ours. Confused, I ****ed it and set the phone down. When she got out of the shower, I asked about it casually. "Did you have to book another room for someone last night?" She didn't miss a beat. "Oh yeah, Maya's flight got canceled. She was stuck without a room, so I booked one and charged it to my expense account. I forgot to mention it." Her tone was light, but her eyes didn't meet mine. "Maya from Atlanta?" "Yeah." She grabbed her moisturizer, started dabbing it on like we weren't having a conversation. "I thought she flew out Wednesday." She froze for half a second, barely long enough to notice, then kept going. "No, she got delayed. It was last minute." That's when I knew something was wrong. Jessica was quick on her feet, but she hated lying. Her tells were always subtle. She over-explained, got a little too confident, used names too often. I didn't argue, just nodded and finished getting dressed. That afternoon, while she was still in meetings, I walked down to the front desk under the pretense of looking for a misplaced charger. I asked to be transferred to building security. Told them we thought there might have been a credit card mix-up, maybe even fraud. I said my wife had charged a second room and we weren't sure if it had been tampered with. I dropped her title, her department, her employee ID. They didn't ask many questions. By the next morning, I had an email in my inbox. Surveillance footage request, fulfilled. I opened the video. It was black and white, grainy, time-stamped at 12:47 a.m. Just around the time she told me she was on the phone with New Orleans. There she was, walking into the lobby, heels in hand, barefoot, laughing. And walking beside her, a man. He was tall, slim, dark suit, charcoal overcoat. His arm brushed hers as they moved past the concierge desk. They didn't look at each other, but they didn't need to. He held her heels. She held the room key. They entered the elevator together. That was all the footage showed. But it was more than enough. My heart pounded, even though the room around me was silent. I stared at the screen until it went black, until my reflection stared back at me. Wide-eyed, mouth slightly open, like I just witnessed a car crash. Because in a way I had. When I showed her the receipt that night, I didn't mention the footage. I needed to see if she'd lie again. "You sure it was Maya's room?" I asked, watching her face. She didn't hesitate. "Yeah. Why?" I shrugged. "Nothing. Just looked fancy for a last-minute booking." She narrowed her eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing." And then she flipped the switch. "Oh my God. Are you seriously starting this again?" She snapped. "What? I book a hotel room for a coworker and now I'm cheating. Jesus, do you even hear yourself?" I stayed calm. "I'm asking a question." "No, you're accusing me. Like you always do. You think just because I travel, I'm sleeping around? You're projecting, Mark. Maybe you should ask yourself why you don't trust me." The irony was suffocating. "I've never accused you of anything. You didn't have to. The implication is enough." She crossed her arms. "You've always been like this. You get weird when I'm gone. You don't like it when I dress up. You check my phone." "I didn't check your phone," I said. And it was technically true. It was right there. It lit up. She scoffed. "You know what? This is your issue. Your paranoia. Not mine. I'm allowed to have a career. I'm allowed to have friends. Sorry if that threatens you." She stormed off before I could reply, slamming the bathroom door behind her. And that's when it really hit me, not just the betrayal but the gaslighting. The rewriting of reality in real time. She wasn't just lying. She was rewriting the narrative to make me feel like I was the one losing control. That's when I realized, this wasn't new. This had been happening for a while. This was just the first time I caught a glimpse of the truth behind the curtain. And that was the first night I didn't sleep beside her. Not physically, not emotionally. She was only a few feet away, lying still under hotel sheets. But in my mind, she had already left. The footage should have been enough. A sane person would have walked away right then. But that's the thing about betrayal, you don't just get mad. You get obsessed. You start replaying everything in your head, over and over, trying to understand what was real and what was just performance. I told myself I'd give her a chance to come clean, that maybe there was an explanation I hadn't thought of. But deep down, I already knew the truth. And once I let myself believe it, the floodgates opened. I started noticing things I had ignored for months, maybe longer. First, there was the second phone. I found it by accident. One Saturday morning, we were in New Orleans for a property launch her firm was handling. She had invited me to tag along and turn it into a weekend getaway. The trip felt forced from the beginning, like she was trying to prove something, like she needed me to believe things were still normal. She went down to the lobby to grab us coffee. Her purse was still on the bed. I don't know what made me look. I wasn't the type to snoop, but my gut had been screaming since Chicago. Something told me to open it. Inside, under her makeup bag, was a second phone. A black Android. Same model as her work phone, but this one wasn't company issued. It was powered off, no case, no pop socket, no stickers. No identity. It felt like touching something radioactive. When she came back upstairs, I didn't say a word. Just handed her the coffee and smiled like everything was fine. But something changed in me that day. I wasn't looking for comfort anymore. I was looking for truth. Then there were the passwords. She changed them constantly. The one for our Netflix account stopped working one night, and when I asked her about it, she casually said she had updated it but forgot to tell me. Same thing with the Wi-Fi. Then our joint calendar. Then her laptop. Every time it was a different excuse, security updates, company policy. I must have typed it wrong. Eventually, I stopped asking. She used to share everything with me. Now she was building walls, one lock at a time. I remembered something else. She started withdrawing cash. Hundreds at a time. Not often enough to raise alarm, but regularly enough to be suspicious. Jessica used to be all about points and rewards. She hated using cash. Now, every few weeks, I'd see $300, $400, sometimes $500 pulled out of our joint account with no explanation. When I asked about it, she brushed it off. Tips for the team, she'd say. Or I just prefer having cash when I travel. Easier than dealing with receipts. I wanted to believe her, but the more I looked, the less any of it made sense. She stopped leaving digital footprints. Entire message threads were gone. Not deleted, wiped. I'd see a conversation pop up while she was texting and then, hours later, nothing. No chat history. Not even an emoji left behind. It was like talking to a ghost who left no trace. And then there were the packages. That's what really pushed me over the edge. It happened during a trip to New Orleans, just a few weeks after the hotel incident. She said she had a last-minute meeting and couldn't make it, but there was a package at her office that needed to be picked up immediately. Please, she said. It's sealed. Just bring it back to the hotel. I'll deal with it later. So I went. Her office was quiet, almost too quiet. I signed in at the front desk, gave her name, and waited as the receptionist disappeared behind a door. When she came back, she handed me a thick, rectangular box wrapped in brown paper. No labels, no markings, just heavy enough to feel wrong in my hands. I asked what was in it. She smiled, tight-lipped. Just reports. Really sensitive stuff. Don't open it. I didn't. But the next morning, when I woke up, Jessica was gone. No note. No message. No sign she'd even slept next to me. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I called her assistant. He hadn't heard from her either. I tried not to panic. Maybe she had an early meeting and forgot to wake me. Maybe there was a flight change. Hours passed. Still nothing. Then around 6 p.m., I got a text. Sorry. Got called into a crisis meeting in Dallas. Had to reroute. Back tomorrow. Love you. Dallas? I checked our airline app. No flights booked under her name. Nothing to Dallas. Nothing to anywhere. I waited for her to come back. She did. 2 days later. No explanation. Just a hug, a weak apology, and a fresh lie about how chaotic work had been. I didn't ask questions. I just watched. Something was unraveling. Not just her behavior, but the entire story she'd built. And still, I didn't confront her. Not directly. Instead, I did what I never thought I'd do. I started tracking her. I didn't install anything illegal. I'm not a hacker. But I remembered that she once connected her car's GPS to our shared family app. It was one of those find your car in the parking lot features. She probably forgot it was still synced to my phone. So I checked it. The first time was a Tuesday. She told me she was going to San Antonio for a client meet and greet. But her car pinged outside a restaurant in Austin. Not just any restaurant, a wine bar we used to go to on date nights. She stayed for 3 hours. Then 2 days later, she said she was in a strategy offsite in Houston. Her GPS said otherwise. She was parked in a private garage downtown, across from a boutique hotel. And every time I kept my mouth shut, I wanted more than suspicion. I wanted proof. One night, I made a copy of her travel receipts. She left her work folder out on the table, and I took photos of everything: flight confirmations, parking stubs, hotel invoices. It wasn't until I lined them up next to each other that I saw the pattern. Multiple bookings in her name. Same destinations. Different guests. Names I didn't recognize. But one kept repeating. Daniel. My brother. At first, I thought it had to be someone else. Client. A vendor. Coincidence. But then I looked closer. Same last name. Same email domain. My brother Daniel, the one who had been oddly distant for the past year. The one who used to call me every week and now barely texted. The one who suddenly started spending more time in Jessica's cities than in his own. I felt sick. I pulled up a hotel receipt from Chicago, then another from New Orleans. Both had the same check-in time, same suite number. And in the additional guest field, Daniel K. Turner. I remembered what Jessica once told me when we first got married, that cheating wasn't just about S**X. It was about secrecy, about effort. Cheating is about how much work someone is willing to put in to keep you from knowing. And suddenly it all made sense. The trips, the cash, the second phone, the vanishing texts, the packages. I was picking up sealed boxes for her while she disappeared into another city, another room, another life. I didn't know what was worse, the betrayal or the fact that I had ignored it for so long. It wasn't just her. It was him too. And I was finally starting to see just how far it went. I used to believe that if someone betrayed me, really betrayed me, I'd know. That there'd be this unmistakable gut punch, a moment of clarity. But the truth is, betrayal doesn't arrive like a car crash. It's a slow leak. You don't notice you're bleeding out until you're on the floor, dizzy, wondering when it all started. By the time I had connected Jessica's hotel receipts and GPS logs to Daniel's name, my brain was already in overdrive. Suspicion had long since given way to dread. But I hadn't confronted either of them, not yet. I needed more than overlaps and matching locations. I needed something undeniable. So I dug deeper. I remembered that Daniel had once used my old work laptop. He borrowed it while waiting on a replacement during a client project. That laptop was in the garage, buried under moving boxes we never unpacked. I powered it up and prayed he'd been sloppy. He had. The browser history was long gone, but the downloads folder hadn't been wiped. Buried in it were PDFs, scanned receipts, parking passes, a few calendar invites auto-downloaded from emails. One of them stood out immediately. Guest confirmation, Riverline Hotel, New Orleans. Room 1902. 2 guests. Jessica Turner. Daniel Turner. No incognito explanation. No professional event. Just a suite booked for 3 nights, confirmed under both of their names. Attached to it was a PDF of a food and beverage bill. Room service for 2. Dinner, dessert, champagne. A bottle of Cabernet that cost more than our monthly grocery bill. And the timestamp? 1:13 a.m. That wasn't business. That was int asterisk Macy. The same night she told me she was exhausted from back-to-back meetings and going straight to sleep. I remembered calling her that night. She'd picked up after 3 rings, her voice groggy. Just about to pass out, babe, she whispered. Can I call you in the morning? Now I knew she wasn't alone. She was whispering because he was there. My brother. Still, some voice inside me held back. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe denial. But I needed one final nail. Something they couldn't talk their way out of. And I got it, unexpectedly, through her company's travel management portal. Jessica and I shared the same primary credit card. Years ago, we'd enabled transaction notifications through our bank app. She had since turned hers off. I hadn't. One afternoon, a charge came through from Valet One parking in Dallas. It pinged at 3:47 p.m. Just 15 minutes after she texted me. Flight delayed, stuck at the gate. So frustrating. I checked the address. It wasn't the airport. It was a private parking garage 5 blocks from the Ellington Suites, a place I only recognized because Daniel had once taken me there for drinks during a conference. I remembered the lobby, marble floors, gold trim, and a staff trained to keep secrets. I opened the hotel website. To book a room, you needed to input guest names and emails. I started a dummy booking, just to see how far I could go without paying. Then, something strange happened. I typed in Jessica's name and email, company address, and a pop-up appeared. Welcome back, Jessica. Continue booking with your preferences? Her preferences were saved. I checked the recent guest reviews and photos. There it was again, room 511. A corner suite with views of downtown. It showed up twice in the gallery under popular stays. I called the front desk, pretending to be a reporter confirming attendance for a corporate hospitality story. I said I needed to verify some guest check-ins for accuracy. The woman on the phone hesitated, then asked, "What's the last name again?" "Turner." There was a pause. Then, "We've had a Daniel Turner and a Jessica Turner stay with us multiple times. Are you with the company hosting them?" "Correct," I said quickly. "Well, they typically request a shared executive suite under both names. Is that what you're referring to?" "Yes," I lied. "Thank you. That's all I needed." I hung up and stared at my phone. There it was. The thing I couldn't unsee. Not an accident. Not a one-time mistake. This was a pattern. A routine. They were traveling together. Booking under our shared name. Using my trust as cover. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. I wanted to punch a wall. But I didn't. Instead, I drove. Nowhere in particular, just out. I ended up at a gas station on the edge of town, leaning against the hood of my car like some dazed extra in a crime show. I called my friend Evan. We hadn't talked in weeks. He picked up on the second ring. "Mark, I need to ask you something," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Have you seen Daniel recently?" There was a pause. Yeah. Not in person. We text sometimes." "Why? Anything strange?" Another pause. "What kind of strange? Has he mentioned Jessica?" Silence. "Evan." "Okay," he said carefully. "Listen, I didn't want to be the guy who says something and blows up your life, but yeah, once, a few months ago, he said something weird. I thought it was a joke at the time." "What did he say?" "He said, 'Funny how things work out, huh? Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who understand us best.' Then he smiled in that way he does, like he thinks he knows something you don't." I felt my stomach drop. I asked what he meant. Evan continued. "And he just said, 'Jessica gets it. She gets me.'" I laughed, told him to cut it out. He didn't say anything else. I hung up shortly after, thanking him for being honest. That night, I went back through everything. Printed every receipt, every travel log, every email forward I had saved from the company portal. I laid it all out across the kitchen table, organizing it like a crime board because that's what it felt like. A betrayal mapped out in timestamps and dollar amounts. At the center, Jessica and Daniel. One married to me, one born my brother. And me? I was the ghost, the collateral. I had the evidence. All of it. But strangely, I didn't feel relief. I felt hollow. Like I had uncovered something ancient and rotten buried beneath the floorboards of my life. A slow poisoning that had spread without me noticing. And now I had to decide what to do with it. 15 years. That's how long it had been since I'd seen Jessica's handwriting. The envelope arrived without warning. No return address, no sender name. Just my name scrawled across the front in that unmistakable slanted script. I almost didn't open it. I nearly tossed it in the trash, assuming it was a scam or some old legal form dredged up from the divorce records. But I didn't. I stood in the hallway of my new place, envelope in hand, staring at it like it might explode. My fingers tingled as I opened it, slow and hesitant, like I was peeling open a part of myself I'd sealed off a decade ago. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No preamble, no apology, just a few lines written with steady, deliberate strokes. "Mark, there's a box. You probably forgot about it, but I didn't. You'll find it where we used to keep the photo albums. I resealed it before I left. I meant to tell you years ago, but I didn't have the strength. If you still want answers, open it. Jessica." I stood there, frozen, the paper trembling in my hand. The photo albums. She meant the attic. I hadn't been up there in years. Not since I moved out of our old house. The boxes had followed me like ghosts in cardboard, but I never opened them. I just shoved them onto shelves, promising myself I'd sort through them someday. Apparently, someday had arrived. I climbed the attic stairs, dust falling in lazy beams through the light slats. The air smelled like cedar and paper. I scanned the shelves until I saw it. An unassuming storage bin, plastic, weathered, labeled albums old in black Sharpie. I pulled it down. Inside were a few photo books, yellowed wedding cards, a stack of old maps from trips we took when we were still pretending to be happy. But buried beneath them was something I hadn't seen in years. A sealed shoebox wrapped in packing tape. Heavy. Heavier than I remembered. And resealed just like she said. I sat on the attic floor, heart racing, and peeled back the tape with a utility knife. The top popped off with a quiet hiss. Inside were three things: a manila envelope, a USB drive, and a folded sheet of paper, soft with age. I started with the paper. It was dated October 3rd, 2010, a year before everything fell apart. The handwriting was hers, shakier than the letter she'd just sent. Mark, if you're reading this, I guess the truth finally caught up to us. I never wanted it to end like this. I never meant for you to be hurt. But I also couldn't live with the secrets anymore. There's something you need to know about Alex. He might not be your son. I stopped reading. My throat closed. My heart stumbled. Alex, Jessica and I had separated before ever having kids. Or at least I thought so. She never had a child with me. So the name, Alex, meant nothing at first. Until I remembered a vague Facebook post from years ago, back when I still occasionally stalked her online. A young man graduating high school, same last name, tagged in her photos, smiling, tall, familiar. I resumed reading. When I found out I was pregnant, I didn't tell either of you. You and Daniel. I kept it quiet until I could figure it out. I took a paternity test, but I couldn't bring myself to read the results. They're in this envelope. I thought about telling you so many times, but every time I got close, I panicked. I didn't want to rip your family apart more than I already had. I thought maybe I could bury the truth and keep everyone safe. But the truth never stays buried. Does it? I unfolded the envelope next. Inside was a printed lab report. Paternity analysis report, confidential. 3 names. Child, Alexander Turner. Alleged fathers, Mark Turner, Daniel Turner. Result: inconclusive due to partial match with both parties. Additional testing required. My hands trembled. I had no idea she'd even been pregnant. No idea a child had been born. And now this, a son grown, and a mystery still hanging between me and the one person who had ruined everything. Daniel. Even dead, his shadow loomed. He passed in 2020. Motorcycle accident in rural Oklahoma. We hadn't spoken in years. He never reached out. Neither did I. But apparently Jessica had. The last item in the box was the USB. I took it downstairs, plugged it into my laptop, and opened the only folder it contained. /Jessica_evidence/. Dozens of files. Some were scanned documents, hotel invoices, email printouts, plane tickets. But others were more disturbing. Photos of my apartment building from across the street. /TS of my mailbox. My windows. A few of me taken from behind in public, unknowing. There were video files, too. Most were silent. Grainy footage of me entering and leaving various places. One showed me speaking to someone at a cafe, timestamped 3 months after the divorce. Someone had been watching me for years. One document stood out, a scanned notebook page. I recognized Daniel's handwriting. *leverage. Photos of Jessica and Mark post-divorce. DNA ambiguity, keep sealed. Custody potential if Alex unstable. Custody? Was Daniel planning to take Alex? Did he believe the child was his? Or was it just another power game? The truth unfolded like a knot pulling tighter and tighter. Jessica had lived in secrecy. Daniel had schemed behind both our backs. And I had been the blind one, the outsider in my own story. The next morning, I called the return address from the letter. It turned out to be A.P.O. box in Oregon. No forwarding contact, just a dead end. But something had shifted. Jessica hadn't written to reconcile. She had written to confess. Not for herself, but for him. For Alex. A week later, a knock came at my door. I opened it to find a man in his 20s. Broad-shouldered, dark hair, eyes like mine but a jawline like Daniel's. He looked uncertain, nervous. like someone who'd been practicing a speech on the drive over but forgot all the words the moment it mattered. He stuck out his hand. "You're Mark, right?" I nodded slowly. He took a breath. "I'm Alex. I'm Alex." The words didn't land right at first. I just stood there, half in the doorway, half in disbelief. He was older than I expected, mid-20s maybe, taller than me by a couple inches. Same eyes. That was the part one couldn't ignore. His eyes were mine. But the rest, the posture, the jaw, the way he shifted like he was used to watching people carefully, that was all Daniel. I opened the door wider. "Come in." He stepped past me, looking around like he'd walked into a museum of someone else's life. He paused at the framed photos near the fireplace. Pictures of friends, a hiking trip, no family. None of Jessica. None of Daniel. "Thanks for seeing me," he said, his voice steady but unsure. "I wasn't sure if you'd slam the door." I considered it. A hint of a smile tugged at his mouth. "Fair." We sat at the kitchen table, and for a few seconds, we just stared at each other like we were trying to spot the truth in each other's face. It was surreal. I didn't know whether to feel anger or affection or both. Finally, I asked, "Why now?" Alex looked down at his hands. "Because of the letter. I read it too. She sent me a copy." I leaned back. "Did you know about me? About all of this?" He nodded. "Pieces. I knew your name growing up. Jessica. My mom. She told me stories about you. You were the one that got away. The guy she almost built a life with. But she never said you might be my father." I swallowed. "She told you it was Daniel?" "She didn't say that either. She just said it was complicated. That she made mistakes. That there were things she wasn't ready to explain. I figured it out on my own." He pulled something from his coat pocket and slid it across the table. Another envelope. Another lab result. I didn't want to touch it. "You had another test done?" I asked. He nodded. 2 months ago. I had a feeling. I wanted answers before I ever came here. I stared at the envelope like it might burn me. "What did it say?" He hesitated. "It says I'm your son." My breath caught. It felt like a punch and a gift at the same time. "I didn't want to show up until I was sure," he added quickly. "I didn't want to drop a maybe on you. You deserved better than that." I opened the envelope, anyway, just to see it, just to believe it. And there it was in clean lab-certified text. Paternity, Mark Turner, 99. 97% probability. I set the paper down. He waited, gave me space. Then he said something I didn't expect. "She told me he used me, Daniel, that he used both of you." I looked up. "What do you mean?" He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a flash drive. This was in a safe deposit box. Her lawyer gave it to me after she passed. "Passed?" Alex nodded. 6 months ago. Ovarian cancer. She didn't tell anyone. Just handled it. Quietly. Something in my chest cracked open. I hated her for years. I rehearsed every word I'd say if I ever saw her again. But hearing she was gone, really gone, hit me harder than I thought it would. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. He nodded, eyes glassy. "Me too." I plugged the drive into my laptop. There were folders, documents, photos, old recordings. But one folder stood out, titled simply, Daniel. Inside were surveillance videos, some taken from cameras I recognized, some I didn't. Footage of me at work, at home, on walks, emails too. Drafts from Daniel's account. Messages to people in Jessica's firm. Subject lines like, anonymous tip, suspicious activity, and personal conduct review. Some had attachments, altered photos, blurred faces, misleading timestamps. All pointing to one thing. Daniel had been trying to ruin me. Jessica had discovered it years ago. She'd confronted him, threatened him with legal action, but he backed off just long enough for her to think it was over. It wasn't. One folder was labeled, Custody, Alex. Inside were forged court documents. Drafts of affidavits claiming I had abandoned Jessica, that I had denied paternity, that I was unstable, violent, unfit. Alex stared at them like he'd seen them too many times already. He was going to take me, he said. File for custody. Claim I was his. Make it look like you didn't want me. Why? Alex shrugged. Control. I think he resented both of you. Her for choosing you even after the affair. You for existing. For being the one she always compared him to. I shook my head, stunned. She told you all this? Some of it. The rest I put together from the files. Another folder was labeled audio. We clicked on one file. It was a phone recording. Jessica's voice, calm, scared. You said you'd drop it. Daniel? You left me out, Jess. Don't pretend that didn't matter. Jessica. Because you lied. Because you said you wanted help and instead you followed me. You took pictures of Mark's house. You broke into his life. Daniel, he deserves worse. And you know it. Jessica, you don't get to rewrite this. Daniel, I already have. The file ended in silence. Alex closed the laptop slowly. We both sat there, the room filled with a quiet neither of us knew what to do with. I finally said, you didn't have to bring this. You could have walked away. He nodded. I know, but I wanted to meet the man who didn't try to own me. The one who lost everything and still didn't play games. My eyes met his. I don't know how to be a dad. Not to a grown man. Not like this. He smiled faintly. I'm not asking for a dad. Just maybe a chance to know who I came from. Without the lies. I nodded, slowly. That night, after Alex left, I sat alone with the files. With the pieces of a war I didn't even know I was part of. Jessica had tried to protect me in her own broken way. And Daniel, he had spent years trying to erase me from the equation, to rewrite history, to twist blood and loyalty into E*P***NS. And Alex, he was the result of all of it. Not just a son, a survivor. Alex drove to Daniel's old lakeside cabin in Oklahoma. Inside, he found walls covered in photos, Jessica, me, even Alex as a child, mapped out with dates and strings like a conspiracy board. A folder labeled Leverage held forged custody papers, financial documents, and emails. Daniel had tracked us for years, obsessed with control. It wasn't about love, it was about ownership. He never let go. Not of her. Not of me. Not of the lie he built. In court, Daniel's forged documents collapsed. Emails, audio, and the paternity truth unraveled everything. The judge dismissed his custody claims, referring the case to the district attorney. Alex stood tall, declaring that family meant loyalty, not blood. The courtroom was still as the ruling came. Daniel was removed under guard. Alex turned to me and smiled. We walked out side by side, not by blood alone, but by something stronger, choice.